Twilight Zone is one of the most iconic and influential TV shows of all time. So much so that it is an inspiration for pretty much every anthology horror or sci-fi show. It's also inspired movies like Jacob's Ladder, Poltergeist, and my favorite movie of all time, The Truman Show. Needless to say, it's kind of a big deal. I mean, it even has a ride at Disney World. And it's so popular that they tried to reboot the series multiple times in the 80s, early 2000s, and 2019, but sadly none of them could capture the same magic of the original. The Twilight Zone was created in 1959 by the genius Rod Serling. It aired with 5 seasons for 5 years with 156 episodes in the original series, and Rod himself writing 92 of the 156. It aired on CBS, and it was filmed entirely in black and white because at the time it wasn't very common to have color TVs, and also the show was pretty expensive to film, so to save money they were not shooting it in color. The show is seen as timeless, and it was designed that way. At the time, censorship was pretty harsh on TV, so Serling used this show as a vehicle to comment on more controversial materials that sponsors would usually censor out. And the episodes got through because they were disguised as science fiction stories. And just like my last Twilight Zone video, which is at 100K right now, thank you very much for that, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street is one of the most iconic and highest rated episodes in all of the series. It's one of the most well-known episodes of the Twilight Zone because of its commentary on paranoia and mass hysteria, and also I've learned that a lot of people had to watch and write reports on this episode in school. I wish I could have done that. I would have killed that shit. So this episode is kind of burned into a lot of kids' memories. This episode was written by Rod Serling himself, and it was directed by Ron Winston, who directed a couple of other really good Twilight Zone episodes, those being The Big Tall Wish and Stopover in a Quiet Town. You could definitely tell he directed those two. They look exactly like this episode. There is a remake version of this same episode, but sadly I'm not going to be talking about that one today. Both episodes have so much I could say about them, so I think that I want to make separate videos for them. But we have a lot to talk about, so let's quit yapping and get into it. We start this episode by being introduced to the iconic Maple Street, a picture-perfect town where everyone gets along. They hang out together, have barbecues, all the children are friends, but at exactly 9:43 p.m., something strange happens. This is when we are introduced to Steve, our main character for this episode. After that strange loud noise and light, Steve's wife comes outside to see what all the commotion was, and Steve just tells her that it must have been some sort of weird meteor. Yeah, because you know meteors like flash and stuff, right? But then we cut to Rod's introduction, where he reintroduces us to Maple Street, but makes it sound a bit more ominous and scary, and leaves us with the foreshadowing.
Maple Street, in the last calm and reflective moment, before the monsters came.
Oh cool, monsters! There's actually monsters in this episode, right? We cut to a little later and it seems no electronics are working anywhere in the town. Not the lights, the phones, the drills, the stoves, or even portable radios that should work even if the power goes out. This of course has the whole town coming out to see if anybody else's power is working, but it's a resounding no across them all. So this nice guy named Pete Van Horn offers to head over to the next street and see if they have power. And as he does that, everyone gathers to try and figure out what is happening. Someone theorizes that it is an electrical storm, but it's a nice sunny day. There's no way it was a storm of any kind. So this guy Charlie offers to go down to the police station and tell them what's going on in his street, but he starts to rethink that, and he thinks maybe it's taking things a little too far. I mean, all that happened is the power went out. It'll probably be back on in a few hours, right? But Steve doesn't think it's a terrible idea, and then he offers to head downtown with Charlie to see if they can help figure out what's going on. So he hops in his car, but it won't start. And it was just working earlier because he took it to go get some gas. But a malfunctioning car isn't going to stop him from heading downtown. So him and Charlie decide to just head there on foot. But that's when they are stopped by this kid named Tommy. Tommy tells them that he doesn't think they want them to leave the town.
Who doesn't want us to?
Them?
Tommy seems to think that the thing that flew over their head wasn't a meteor, but an alien spaceship from outer space.
From outer space shit. Sally, you better take him upstairs, put him to bed.
Did she just say shit?
From outer space shit.
Were they allowed to say shit in the 1960s?
From outer space shit.
I know the captions say ship, but it doesn't sound like she says that at all, and her mouth doesn't move like that. It's canon now, she said shit. Because of this video, she said shit. The meteor obviously has Tommy pretty spooked, so Steve tries to ease Tommy's mind and everybody else's mind by saying it really was just a meteor, and sometimes meteors can do strange things, kind of like sunspots. Do sunspots mess with electronics? Okay, they can kind of mess with stuff, but it's not the sunspot itself that causes it. But the solar flares that come from the sunspots can mess with some things if they're strong enough, at least, because they emit electromagnetic waves. Interesting. But even if it was a solar flare in this episode, it wouldn't take out every electronic like they're claiming. Tommy claims that in this comic book that he read, aliens invaded a small town and nobody could leave. They also sent down a couple of aliens that look just like humans to blend in with everybody else. And in his comic, the aliens sent down a mother, a father, and 2 kids to blend in. And it was up to the rest of the town to find the aliens and kick them out. I don't know why, but every time he says this, I think of the 2015 Vision comic. There's nothing remotely similar that happens in that comic, but I think the 1950s/60s aesthetic just reminds me of it for some reason. At first, the town people think that Tommy's just being a bit ridiculous, but after a second thought, they start questioning if that's really what's happening to them. To ease some of the tension, Steve jokingly says that they should run some tests to see who's actually human, which lightens the mood a little bit and kind of works. Kind of. Also, what kind of tests? Are you stabbing people with hot wires like in The Thing? Because that would be fun. Charlie then remembers and questions why it's taking so long for their other neighbor, Pete, to come back with info about the street over. And as he's questioning about that, this guy Les tests to see if his car will work. But of course it doesn't. So he hops out of his car and starts to walk back to the group when his car starts on its own. This is obviously very shocking to Les, but the townspeople waste no time in starting a conspiracy about Les and his car. Of course, some people think his car starting on its own is absolute proof that he is an alien. And this one guy even points out that he never came outside when the meteor flew overhead. He only came outside when he saw a big crowd. Charlie even says that he's been a weird guy the whole time that they've lived there.
He always was an oddball. Him and his whole family. Real oddball.
Okay, that's actually really messed up. You're all buddy-buddy with this guy for years, and then his car starts on its own, and suddenly you've never liked the guy? Have you guys even tried your cars? What if they start on their own too? Slowly, the crowd starts to mob the poor guy. But luckily, Steve has a level head still and stops them before they try and hurt him. They don't want to stop, but they do, and they give Les a second to explain himself. But mid-explanation,
You saw me. All of you saw me.
the car turns off on its own. The crowd once again questions Les because nothing else is working on the street except for his car. But he obviously doesn't know how or why his car starts, and no one else does either. But that doesn't make him a criminal. Or an alien. Steve once again tries to ease the tension by simply explaining that everybody's all riled up and on a monster hunt for an alien family because this little kid Tommy has them all spooked. And they can't explain what is going on around them, so they're trying to find someone to blame. And of course this sounds really silly to Les, so he says,
What is this, a practical joke or something?
okay Les, things aren't looking too good, man. I've been trying to defend you, but that's pretty hard to defend. Les claims that he really has no idea why or how his car keeps turning on and off, but he has lived in that house with his family for many years, and that should prove to them that him and his family aren't aliens from outer space. That's when this lady pipes up and claims that she wakes up early some mornings. And in those mornings, she always catches Les standing in his yard, looking up at the sky as if he was looking or waiting for something. This kind of forces Les to confess to the whole town that he has insomnia. And sometimes my guy just likes to look up at the night sky. I mean, I'm kind of guilty of this. We've all just walked outside and looked up for a while. Everybody's done that, right? And my boy Les is a little offended that all of his neighbors and friends would so quickly turn on him just because his car is the only one starting and he likes to look at the stars every once in a while. And then he predicts and foreshadows that the people are starting something that will rip this neighborhood apart.
You're letting something begin here that's a nightmare.
Later that night, the power is still out, and there is now a 24/7 watch on Les and his family. Charlie's wife points out how it's very strange to keep such a close eye on their neighbors, someone that they've known for so long. And she's not wrong either. It is pretty weird behavior. But Charlie believes that them staying there for multiple years doesn't prove that they're innocent. Charlie says that anyone who spends a lot of time staring at the sky isn't normal. But then he instantly contradicts himself by saying if it were just a regular old day, he wouldn't think anything of Les looking up at the sky at night. But since it's not a normal day, it's weird behavior. Steve tries to go and chat with Les. Steve just wanted to talk to him because he's actually on Les's side. He thinks everyone around them is being ridiculous. But because he's being a decent human being and trying to actually solve this whole ordeal, this now has put suspicion on Steve himself. But Steve defends himself by saying that everyone on the street should still be suspicious. And it's pretty dumb for them all to watch this one poor family all night. But no matter how big of a speech Steve gives, Charlie isn't giving in. He knows that the Goodman family are aliens.
There's something you can do, Charlie. You can go inside and keep your mouth shut.
Damn! I mean, he needed to hear that, but damn. And since Steve is retaliating against the mob, they decide to air out some of his dirty laundry. Steve's wife has talked about how he's been working on a radio in their basement for a long time, which isn't so weird, but none of the other townsfolk have ever seen this radio. Who knows, it could be some kind of alien radio reporting back to home base. Charlie pressures Steve about his radio, so Steve tells him what he wants to hear. He tells him that he talks to aliens on his radio, the same one that fly in spaceships disguised as meteors. I mean, right now he's obviously being facetious, and luckily for him, his wife comes to save his hide because it's just a regular ham radio, and she knows this because she bought him a book on repairing it as a gift. And she even offers to show them the radio, but Steve stops her because they shouldn't have to prove themselves to anyone. And that's damn right. Don't you forget it. Charlie once again tries to pressure Steve on the subject, but Steve is tired of it. He tells Charlie to stop telling everybody who's good, who's bad, who to trust, and who not to trust. Who is Charlie to be the all-knowing one in the neighborhood? He also shames all the other people for falling for Charlie's lies. He says that they're all desperate to find a scapegoat, to find someone to blame for this strange power outage. This intense speech seems to actually wake a few neighbors up from their weird delusion. It is until they hear footsteps walking towards them. They see a man shrouded in darkness and calmly walking towards them from down the street. Tommy pushes in front of the crowd and says,
The monster! It's the monster!
And despite the whole town staring this guy down, he doesn't say a word. He just quietly walks towards them. This spooks a lot of them out, and Les runs inside to grab his shotgun just in case it is a monster. But believe it or not, Steve once again is the voice of reason and says that they don't need a shotgun, they just need to talk to whoever this is. But the paranoia has gotten too bad for Charlie, and he doesn't trust the man on the street. So he yanks the gun from Steve and shoots the man dead. Everyone rushes over to the dead man and finds that it's their neighbor, Pete Van Horn, the same guy who went to see if anyone else had power earlier in the day. He didn't say anything because it's his own neighborhood. He should be safe there. And just like that, he's dead. All because Charlie believed in a sci-fi story that a kid had read. Instantly, all the neighbors turn on Charlie. He killed an innocent man in cold blood. He tries to say that he didn't know who it was and he just came out of the darkness, so he was trying to protect his home. And as he tries to explain himself, the lights to Charlie's home turn on.
Charlie, the lights just went on in your house.
Things aren't looking too good for you, Charlie. I'm just saying. He didn't think twice about killing Pete, and now he's the only neighbor in the whole neighborhood that has power. And he was also the one who was telling everyone who to be wary of and who not to trust, but maybe that was his plan all along. Maybe he's the alien and he got in everyone's head. Les is obviously still upset about earlier and fabricates another theory. Maybe Pete figured out who among them was the imposter. That's an Among Us reference. Maybe Pete was coming back to tell them some important information, and that information was that Charlie was the alien. So Charlie had to get rid of him as quickly as possible. This puts Charlie in a panic, and he tries to run back to his house. But before he can even get inside, people start throwing rocks at him and his house. And after a rock hits him in the head and knocks him down, Charlie panics and shifts attention over to the boy Tommy. He says that Tommy was the one who started the whole conspiracy after all. And just like clockwork, the townspeople turn on poor Tommy in an instant. Things are getting really crazy, so Steve tries to settle everyone down once again, but this time it doesn't work. Everyone has gone crazy, and they start chasing the poor kid. But that's when the lights to another house turns on, and then another. And then another. Suddenly it seems like all of the houses have power, but it's turning on and off, and everyone has someone to blame to be an alien. The people of Maple Street have officially gone crazy. There's mass panic all in the streets. You hear screams as lights flicker on and off across the town. People throw bricks and rocks at other people at their houses, and people are shooting people dead. And while all that happens, the camera pans out to a nearby mountain, where two men are watching all of this go down. They say that they've done this experiment hundreds of times before, and this is always the outcome. They say that they always try to pick the most dangerous enemy that they can find, and that enemy is always themselves. It is then revealed that the meteor earlier was in fact a spaceship, and these two men are aliens. And their plan is to take over the planet by letting the humans take out themselves. They just have to go to every town and do this to everyone. And then we fade to a shot of the stars as Rod Serling gives us his outro monologue. He says that the tools of conquest don't always come with bombs and explosions and fallout. There are weapons that are simply thoughts, attitudes, prejudices, only things that can happen in the minds of men.
For the record, prejudices can kill, and suspicion can destroy.
God, some people really need to hear that, but the ones that do won't understand it. He also says the search for a scapegoat is a fallout of its own, for the children and the children's yet unborn.
And the pity of it is that these things cannot be confined to the Twilight Zone.
Truly an iconic story. It's obviously a story about paranoia, mob mentality, and how the real monsters are humans themselves. It's something that movies and TV shows still try to make stories about, but none of them really hit as hard as this one does. And this episode was made in the Cold War era, a time where paranoia was at an all-time high for Americans. The threat of a Soviet invasion was always on people's minds. And there was also fears that some neighbors could be Russian spies. They're moving in next door to gather information on your family. And this episode perfectly captures the fear that many Americans faced during that time. But in a true Twilight Zone fashion, they replaced the spies with aliens or monsters. And it shows how quickly Americans are willing to turn on other Americans if they didn't conform to social norms. And that's another really big thing about this episode. Conformity. When everyone's power is out and nothing electronical or mechanical seems to work, Les's car started on its own. He was out of place. So that kind of put a target on his back. And then suddenly things that usually wouldn't be unusual, like his insomnia or looking up at the night sky, become unusual. Can he not sleep because he's on Russian time or something like that? You know, I don't know. I don't know if that's even a real thing. But it also makes you question, what is even normal? Is going on a walk early in the morning normal? Is mowing your lawn once a week normal? Is sleeping with the TV on normal? Ask my girlfriend and she would say no. But I can't sleep without my TV. Or the fact that Steve is willing to help Les out whenever he is the odd one out. To Steve, he's just helping a friend out. But to everyone else, they're aligned. They're the monsters trying to help each other take over the town. And it doesn't help that Charlie keeps yapping and spewing lies about them being aligned, and that part helps with the mass hysteria. See, it's all connected and it's very easy to understand. Even an idiot like me can get it. And in the 2003 version of this episode, it's pretty much the exact same thing, except for it was made post 9/11. So instead of Soviet spies, they think that it's a terrorist attack on their small suburban town. It's also a little more in your face about the reason they're scared in that episode. But like I said earlier, I'll cover that episode another time. As for the episode itself, of course, I think it's a great episode. It can be a little slow at times, like most Twilight Zone episodes, honestly. But in the short time you get to spend with this neighborhood, you actually get kind of attached to them. And watching them rip each other apart is very upsetting, honestly. And I do kind of wish they didn't have the alien twist ending at the end, because I think if they just had like a strange blackout because of a really low-flying meteor, I think that would hit harder that the humans are the real monsters. And maybe at the end, after they killed the poor old man, the lights turn on all over the town and it was revealed that they were simply being paranoid and following a mob mentality. I feel like it would hit harder if there was no supernatural reason for these people doing this other than them being people, because the monsters in the episode are the people after all. I don't know, let me know what you think about this episode. Also leave me your little high school essays you wrote, because I know I didn't explain it well enough probably. I have a Patreon. The $5 members get bonus content plus videos a day early, maybe some pictures of my cats, a Discord server, and your name right here on screen. Like the video if you like the video. Thank you for watching the video all the way through. I appreciate you all, and peace.